A Republican congresswoman who built a political career as a mega firebrand says she's stepping down. Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation comes after her recent public feud with President Donald Trump. Journalist Steve Futterman has the details on this story, joining us this morning from Los Angeles. Nice to see you, Steve. So this is an ever-changing story. Very quickly, what more can you tell us this morning?
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump, they have been very, very close for many, many years. Let's take a listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is just last year at the Republican National Convention as she talks about Donald Trump.
Today is a celebration. The American spirit is alive and well. And we have once again nominated for president the founding father of the America First movement, Donald John Trump.
Well, nothing looks like that could have gone wrong, but it sure has the past few weeks. This very close political relationship has really gone downhill. It primarily has to do, there are other factors, but it primarily has to do with the Jeffrey Epstein case. Marjorie Taylor Greene supports the release of those Epstein files. And until this week, when Donald Trump knew he would lose that battle, he was opposing the release. He really went after Marjorie Taylor Greene in the last 2 weeks or so. Began not calling her Marjorie Taylor Greene, but Marjorie Traitor Greene. Lots of pressure on her. And last night, she announced she is resigning, and she blamed Trump. Take a listen.
Okay, so this is the moment that Democrats have been building toward, and it's now officially happening. Representative Al Green of Texas has filed a new impeachment resolution against President Trump and is demanding action before Christmas, calling it a countdown to impeachment in a fiery Capitol press conference that put Republicans on notice. Green accused Trump of devolving American democracy into authoritarianism through unauthorized military strikes on Iran, attacks on the judiciary, and systematic abuses of presidential power. This isn't just one congressman making noise. Green's resolution joins A.Res.353 and H.Res. 537 in creating a multi-pronged impeachment offensive that's forcing the question of Trump's removal onto the congressional agenda, whether Republicans like it or not.
But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
From outside sources, and she announces she will leave the House in January. So she'll still be a force, I'm sure, in politics, but she just won't be in the House. Quite a shock in Washington and really around the nation right now.
About the impact of her decision now, Steve, are there any concerns for the GOP?
Well, I think the GOP has some concerns. One of the reasons people believe, and she has not said this, she's alluded to it indirectly, but not said it flat out, there are safety concerns. When you go against Donald Trump, there are outside forces, supporters of Donald Trump, who go after you online, on social media, make threats against you, make death threats against you. Take a listen to Eric Swalwell. He's a Democrat, a congressman. He's been an opponent of Donald Trump. He says often it goes beyond Trump's words.
They think about it, but the number one reason they won't do it, and they tell us this, is personal security. They said the second I do that, my life changes, the death threats come at me.
Let me walk you through what's actually in these resolutions, because the charges are extensive and connect directly to everything we've been covering about Trump's conduct since returning to office. .Res.353, filed back in April 2025, contains 7 separate articles of impeachment covering obstruction, usurpation of congressional appropriations power, abuse of trade authority, violations of First Amendment rights, bribery, and what the resolution calls tyranny, a catch-all for the pattern of authoritarian conduct that's characterized this administration. That's not a narrow technical charge about a single incident. That's a comprehensive indictment of Trump's entire approach to governing. This .Res.537, filed in June 2025, focuses specifically on war powers abuse, the unauthorized military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities that Trump ordered without congressional authorization. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war, precisely to prevent a single person from dragging the nation into military conflict on their own authority. Trump's Iran strikes bypassed that constitutional requirement, launching military action that could have escalated into full-scale war without any congressional debate or approval. That's not a policy disagreement. It's a constitutional violation that strikes at the heart of the separation of powers. Come on. Think about what it means that multiple impeachment resolutions are now pending against a sitting president during his second term. Trump was already impeached twice during his first term, once for the Ukraine scheme, once for inciting the January 6th insurrection. He's the only president in American history to be impeached twice, and now, less than a year into his second term, there are already multiple new impeachment resolutions filed documenting additional high crimes and misdemeanors. The pattern isn't stopping. The abuses aren't stopping. The abuses aren't stopping. And Democrats are putting the constitutional remedy on the table. Green's press conference announcement was dramatic and deliberate. He launched what he called a countdown to impeachment, demanding action before Christmas and framing this as an urgent matter that cannot wait for the normal legislative calendar. His floor speech referenced Trump's use of Truth Social to normalize violence and threaten critics, arguing that the president is actively undermining democratic norms through his daily conduct. Green isn't treating this as a distant theoretical concern. He's treating it as an emergency requiring immediate response. The specific charges about unauthorized Iran strikes deserve particular attention because they represent the most traditional and clear-cut grounds for impeachment in American constitutional history. The framers were deeply concerned about executive war-making power. Having experienced British monarchs dragging the colonies into wars for royal interests, they deliberately gave Congress the war power to ensure that decisions about military conflict would require collective deliberation rather than individual whim. When Trump ordered strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities without congressional authorization, he violated this fundamental constitutional structure. The attacks on the judiciary that Green's resolution cites connect to the pattern we've been covering of Trump threatening and attempting to remove judges who rule against him. An independent judiciary is essential to constitutional government. Judges must be able to rule against the president without fear of retaliation. Trump has attacked judges personally, called for their impeachment, and used his Truth Social platform to target them for criticism by his supporters. This systematic assault on judicial independence represents another ground for impeachment that's distinct from the policy disputes that often dominate political debate. The bribery and corruption charges in IJ.Res.353 presumably relate to the pardon scandals, the foreign money flowing to Trump businesses, and the pattern of using presidential power for personal financial benefit that we've documented extensively. The Constitution specifically lists bribery as grounds for impeachment because the framers understood that corrupt use of official power for personal gain represents a fundamental betrayal of the public trust. Trump's conduct across multiple fronts, the Hernandez drug lord pardon, the Saudi money, the crypto conflicts provide substantial evidence of exactly this kind of corruption. The timing of Green's countdown to impeachment announcement is strategic. It comes as Trump is dealing with multiple simultaneous crises: the pardon scandals, the Venezuela boat strike controversy, the Epstein file releases, the health concerns, the Republican infighting over Speaker Johnson. Each of these individually weakens Trump. Together, they create an environment where impeachment becomes more politically viable because Trump is already damaged and Republicans are already fractured. Green is capitalizing on the accumulated weight of scandals to push for accountability. The Republican House majority creates obvious challenges for impeachment succeeding, but the margin is razor thin at 220-213. In the Tennessee special election we covered showed Republicans underperforming by double digits even in safe districts. If Republican dysfunction continues, and if special elections keep going badly, the majority could become even more precarious. And even if impeachment can't pass the House, the process of forcing votes and debates puts Republicans on record defending Trump's conduct, which becomes campaign ammunition for 2026. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly what the impeachment resolutions charge and how the evidence supports those charges. We're going to look at the war powers violations and why they represent such clear grounds for removal. We're going to examine the political dynamics that could make impeachment more than just a symbolic gesture. And we're going to discuss how Green's countdown connects to everything else converging on Trump right now. Let's get into it. All right, let's get into the specific contents of these impeachment resolutions and why the charges represent serious constitutional violations rather than mere policy disagreements that opponents are trying to weaponize. 353, filed on April 28, 2025, contains 7 articles of impeachment that collectively paint a picture of systematic abuse of presidential power. The resolution was introduced early in Trump's second term as evidence of misconduct accumulated, and its comprehensiveness reflects the breadth of concerns about how Trump has been governing. Article 1 addresses obstruction, specifically Trump's efforts to impede investigations, defy subpoenas, and prevent oversight of his administration. This echoes charges from his first term, but documents new conduct since returning to office. The obstruction includes resistance to congressional oversight, interference with Inspector General investigations, and attempts to block disclosure of information Congress is entitled to review. The pattern of obstruction represents contempt for the constitutional system of checks and balances. Article 2 concerns usurpation of congressional appropriations power. Trump's unauthorized spending of federal funds on priority, Congress never approved or explicitly rejected. The Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse precisely to ensure that the people's representatives control government spending. When a president spends money without congressional authorization, they're seizing a power the Constitution specifically withholds from the executive branch. Article 3 addresses abuse of trade authority. Trump's use of tariffs and trade restrictions in ways that exceed the authority Congress delegated and that serve personal or political purposes rather than legitimate trade policy goals. The Constitution gives Congress authority over foreign commerce, and while some trade powers have been delegated to the president, those delegations have limits. Exceeding those limits represents another form of constitutional violation. Article 4 cites violations of First Amendment rights, the administration's efforts to punish or disadvantage people and organizations based on their speech or political viewpoints. This includes targeting media organizations, retaliating against critics, and using government power to suppress protected expression. The First Amendment is foundational to American democracy, and using presidential power to violate it strikes at the core of constitutional government. Article 5 addresses bribery, the pattern of Trump using his office for personal financial benefit and receiving things of value in exchange for official acts. The Constitution specifically lists bribery as grounds for impeachment because the framers understood how corruption destroys public trust and perverts government to serve private interests rather than the common good. The evidence of corrupt benefit from pardons, foreign money, and policy decisions favoring those who pay Trump is substantial. Article 6 covers what the resolution calls tyranny, a broad charge encompassing the overall pattern of authoritarian conduct that characterizes the administration. This includes attempts to consolidate power, eliminate checks on presidential authority, and govern in ways that undermine democratic accountability. The tyranny article captures conduct that doesn't fit neatly into the other categories, but that collectively represents a fundamental threat to constitutional governance. H.Res. Epps. 537, filed on June 24, 2025, focuses specifically on war powers, abuse arising from Trump's unauthorized military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. This resolution was initially tabled, but has been revived as evidence accumulated and as Green's impeachment push gained momentum. The war powers charge is perhaps the clearest and most traditional ground for impeachment in the American constitutional system. The Constitution explicitly gives Congress the power to declare war. The War Powers Resolution of 1973 requires the president to consult with Congress before introducing armed forces into hostilities and to obtain congressional authorization within 60 days. Trump's Iran strikes bypassed these requirements entirely, ordering military action that could have precipitated full-scale war without any congressional involvement. The framers' concerns about executive war-making were well-founded and prescient. They had seen European monarchs drag their nations into wars for personal glory, family interests, or disputes having nothing to do with the welfare of their people. They deliberately structured the Constitution to require collective deliberation before military conflict, understanding that war is too consequential to leave to one person's judgment. When Trump ordered strikes on Iran unilaterally, he violated this fundamental constitutional principle. Green's newest resolution, filed November 20, 2025, adds additional charges based on more recent conduct. The unauthorized Iran strikes are included, along with Trump's attacks on judges who rule against him and his use of Truth Social to normalize political violence and target critics for harassment by his supporters. Green's press conference announcing the resolution described it as responding to ongoing threats to democracy that require urgent action. The countdown to impeachment framing is deliberately dramatic and designed to create pressure for action. Green is not treating impeachment as a distant possibility to be studied and debated indefinitely. He's treating it as an emergency measure required to protect democracy from an active threat. The demand for pre-Christmas action puts a timeline on the process and challenges House leadership to schedule votes and debates. The connection between these impeachment charges and the scandals we've been covering is direct and documented. The pardon scandals, Hernandez, the blanket election pardon chaos, the DOJ gatekeeping provide evidence for bribery and abuse of power charges. The Venezuela boat strike controversy, with its conflicting accounts and potential war crimes concerns, relates to the military overreach addressed in the War Powers articles. The Epstein file releases and the revelations about Trump knowing about the girls go to character and fitness for office. Each scandal adds weight to the overall case. The Republican House majority obviously presents challenges for impeachment, but the dynamics are more complex than simple party line arithmetic. The margin is 220-213, extremely thin by historical standards. Several Republicans have expressed concerns about various Trump actions, even if they haven't endorsed impeachment. The Tennessee special election showed Republicans underperforming by 13 points in a district Trump won by 22, suggesting the political ground is shifting under the party. and Speaker Johnson's weakened position, with members like Marjorie Taylor Greene leaving while promising to remain vocal, and others openly questioning his leadership, creates chaos that could affect any impeachment vote. Even if impeachment cannot pass the House, the process itself serves purposes. Forcing votes puts every member on record, either defending Trump's conduct or supporting accountability. Those votes become campaign issues in 2026. The debates create opportunities to present evidence to the public in an official forum, and if Republicans vote to table or defeat impeachment, Democrats can run on the argument that Republicans protected a president who violated the Constitution and threatened democracy. The historical context matters for understanding these impeachment efforts. Trump was impeached twice during his first term, more than any other president. He was acquitted both times by the Senate because Republicans refused to vote for conviction, regardless of the evidence. But the impeachment record exists, the charges were documented, the votes were recorded. History has a clear account of what Trump did and how each member of Congress responded. The same documentation will result from these new proceedings. Greene's floor speech launching the countdown specifically cited Trump's use of Truth Social to normalize violence. Trump regularly posts content that his critics argue encourages violence against political opponents, journalists, judges, and others who cross him. While Trump hasn't explicitly ordered violence, the normalization of violent rhetoric from the President of the United States has consequences. When supporters interpret his words as permission or encouragement for violent action, Trump bears responsibility for creating that environment. Okay, so let's break this down into the key points that everyone needs to understand, because this impeachment offensive represents a serious constitutional confrontation that will shape the remainder of Trump's term and the 2026 elections. Point number 1, multiple impeachment resolutions are now pending against Trump, covering a comprehensive range of charges, including obstruction, usurpation of congressional power, war powers abuse, First Amendment violations, bribery, and tyranny. This isn't a narrow technical charge about one incident, but a systematic indictment of how Trump has governed since returning to office. Point number 2, the unauthorized military strikes on Iran represent the clearest and most traditional ground for impeachment because the Constitution explicitly gives Congress war-making authority that Trump bypassed entirely, ordering military action that could have precipitated full-scale war without congressional debate or approval. Point number 3, Greene's countdown to impeachment, demanding action before Christmas, creates urgency and pressure that challenges House leadership to schedule votes and debates, treating impeachment as an emergency measure rather than a distant theoretical possibility. Point number 4, even with Republicans controlling the House by a narrow 220-213 margin, the impeachment process serves purposes including putting every member on record, creating debate opportunities to present evidence publicly, and generating campaign issues for 2026 regardless of ultimate outcome. Point number 5, the charges in these resolutions connect directly to the scandals we've been covering, including the pardon abuses, boat strike controversy, Epstein revelations, and systematic attacks on judicial independence, meaning each new scandal adds weight to the constitutional case for removal. The war powers charge deserves particular emphasis because it represents the most clear-cut constitutional violation in the entire case. The Constitution doesn't merely suggest that Congress has war powers, it explicitly states that Congress has the power to declare war. This wasn't an oversight or ambiguity that the framers left for future generations to resolve. They specifically chose to require collective deliberation before military conflict because they understood the dangers of giving one person unchecked power to start wars. Trump's Iran strikes bypassed this entire constitutional structure. There was no congressional consultation. There was no debate. There was no authorization. Trump simply ordered military strikes on a foreign nation's nuclear facilities, action that could have easily escalated into regional or even global conflict based on his own judgment alone. That's exactly what the Constitution was designed to prevent, and it's exactly what impeachment is designed to remedy. The bribery charge connects to the pattern of corruption we've documented extensively. Trump's pardon of Hernandez, a drug lord who took bribes from El Chapo's cartel, raises obvious questions about what Trump received in return for freeing someone convicted of poisoning American communities with 400 tons of cocaine. The Saudi money flowing to Trump properties, the crypto conflicts where Trump's policies benefit his own holdings, the pattern of foreign governments and lobbyists spending at Trump properties, all of this represents the kind of corrupt dealing. The obstruction charges echo Trump's first impeachment but document new conducts. Trump has continued to defy oversight, resist subpoenas, and prevent Congress from exercising its constitutional functions. He's attempted to fire inspectors general who investigate his administration. He's blocked testimony from administration officials. The pattern of obstruction represents contempt for the separation of powers and the constitutional system of checks and balances. The tyranny article in.gs.res.353 is unusual and captures something important about Trump's governing approach that doesn't fit neatly into traditional legal categories. Trump doesn't just violate specific laws or constitutional provisions, he systematically undermines the entire structure of constitutional democracy. The attacks on judges, the attempts to consolidate power, the use of presidential authority to reward allies and punish enemies, the rhetoric normalizing political violence, all of this collectively represents a threat to democracy that goes beyond any single impeachable offense. Green's demand for pre-Christmas action creates a timeline that will test Democratic unity and Republican stability. If House leadership refuses to schedule votes, Green can force floor consideration through procedural mechanisms that exist for this purpose. The resulting debate, even if ultimately unsuccessful, will dominate news coverage during a period when most Americans are paying attention to politics through the holiday season. The strategic timing is deliberate. The 2026 implications of impeachment proceedings are significant regardless of outcome. If Democrats force votes and Republicans defeat impeachment on party lines, those votes become campaign issues. Democratic candidates can run against Republican incumbents who voted to protect the president who violated the Constitution. If any Republicans break ranks and support impeachment, that creates headlines and potentially opens further fractures in the party. If somehow enough Republicans join Democrats to actually impeach, the Senate trial becomes the defining political event of 2026. The Republican House dynamics create uncertainty about how impeachment votes will actually unfold. Speaker Johnson's weakened position means he may not be able to hold his conference together on a highly charged political vote. Members in swing districts have to calculate whether defending Trump helps or hurts their re-election prospects, and the Tennessee special election suggests defending Trump may be increasingly costly in competitive races. The normal assumption that Republicans will automatically protect Trump may not hold in the current chaotic environment. The accumulation of scandals that we've been documenting throughout this channel strengthens the impeachment case because it shows pattern rather than isolated incidents. Trump's pardon abuses aren't one questionable decision, they're a systematic misuse of clemency power for corrupt purposes. Trump's attacks on judges aren't one angry tweet, they're a sustained assault on judicial independence. Trump's war powers violations aren't one arguable exercise of executive authority, they're a pattern of bypassing constitutional requirements for military action. The comprehensive nature of the impeachment articles reflects the comprehensive nature of Trump's misconduct. Green's specific focus on Trump's normalization of violence through Truth Social raises concerns that go beyond legal technicalities. The President of the United States has enormous influence over political discourse. When Trump posts content that encourages or appears to encourage violence against his critics, he's using that influence to threaten democratic participation. People who fear violence are less likely to speak out, run for office, or participate in democracy. That chilling effect on democratic participation represents a harm that impeachment is designed to address. The historical record being created through these proceedings matters regardless of outcome. Future generations will look back at this period and ask what Congress did when faced with a president who systematically violated the Constitution and threatened democracy. The impeachment resolutions, the debates, the votes, all of it creates a record showing that some members recognized the threat and tried to respond. That record matters for constitutional history and democratic accountability. Looking at the specific evidence available to support each article, the case is substantially documented through the scandals we've been covering. For war powers abuse, the Iran strikes are documented fact. For bribery and corruption, the pardon scandals, foreign money, and crypto conflicts provide extensive evidence. For obstruction, the pattern of defying oversight is well established. For attacks on judges, Trump's own public statements provide the evidence. The impeachment articles aren't based on speculation, they're based on Trump's own conduct, much of it documented in his own words and actions. Anyway, that's where things stand with this impeachment offensive that's demanding action before Christmas and forcing the question of Trump's removal onto the congressional agenda. The multiple resolutions covering comprehensive charges, the war powers violations representing clear constitutional grounds, Green's countdown creating urgency and timeline pressure. The political dynamics that can make proceedings more consequential than simple party line arithmetic suggest, and the connection between impeachment charges and the scandals we've been documenting. Make sure you're subscribed because the countdown to impeachment is now officially underway. In the next few weeks, we'll determine whether Democrats can force meaningful action or whether Republicans will continue protecting Trump regardless of the evidence. Whether votes happen, whether any Republicans break ranks, whether impeachment becomes the defining issue of 2026, all of it will unfold rapidly as Green's Christmas deadline approaches. And if you think Trump's legal and political situation is precarious now, just wait until impeachment debates put every one of his scandals under the congressional spotlight. I'll see you in the next one.